In the rain-soaked streets of Chicago, Illinois, a man who controlled empires stood at the edge of surrender. Vincent Kane, the most feared name in the underworld, had built his kingdom on blood and silence. But now, that silence was suffocating him. He had everything: power, wealth, respect. Yet he felt nothing, until a girl with nothing but hope crossed his path and showed him what he'd forgotten how to see. If you're listening to this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from. The rain hammered against the windows of the penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, each drop a metronome counting down to something Vincent Kane couldn't name. He stood in the darkness, a glass of bourbon untouched in his hand, watching the city lights blur through the storm. Chicago sprawled beneath him like a chessboard he'd already won, every piece in place, every move anticipated. But victory, he'd learned, tasted like ash. Vincent was 42, though his eyes carried decades more. His tailored charcoal suit fit perfectly over broad shoulders that had carried the weight of an empire for 20 years. Dark hair, touched with silver at the temples, framed a face that was handsome in a dangerous way. Sharp jawline, calculating gray eyes that missed nothing, a mouth that rarely smiled. When he walked into a room, silence followed. When he spoke, men obeyed. When he decided someone's fate, it was final. The penthouse reflected his power. Minimalist, expensive, cold. Steel and glass and leather. No photographs, no warmth. Nothing that suggested a man lived here rather than a machine that occasionally required rest. His phone buzzed. Marco, his second in command. "Boss, we got a problem with the South Side shipment. Feds are sniffing around the warehouse on Halstead." Vincent's voice was flat. "Move it. Use the backup location in Pilsen. And Marco, find out who talked." "Already on it." Vincent ended the call and returned to the window. 20 years he'd been doing this. 20 years of problems solved, threats eliminated, empires expanded. His father had built the Kane organization from nothing, clawing his way up from the Irish neighborhoods of Bridgeport until his name meant something. When the old man died, a heart attack at 55, probably from the stress of looking over his shoulder every day, Vincent had inherited not just the business, but the burden. He'd been good at it, better than good. Ruthless when necessary, strategic always, loyal to those who earned it. He'd diversified beyond the old rackets. Construction contracts, real estate, legitimate businesses that laundered money so clean it sparkled. The FBI had been investigating him for a decade, and had nothing. He was untouchable, and completely, utterly empty. The realization had been creeping up on him for months, maybe years. It started as a whisper in quiet moments, then grew louder until it was all he could hear. What was the point? He had no family. His mother had died when he was 12, and he'd never married, never had children. Too dangerous, he'd always told himself. Too many vulnerabilities. His father had taught him that lesson early. Love is a weakness your enemies will exploit. So Vincent had built walls instead of relationships. He had associates, not friends. Employees, not family. And now, at 42, he stood alone in a penthouse worth $8 million, wondering why he bothered getting out of bed. The bourbon remained untouched as he set it down on the glass table. He didn't even want the drink, didn't want anything. His reflection stared back at him from the dark window, a ghost in an expensive suit. The next morning arrived gray and cold, typical for Chicago in late October. Vincent's driver, Tommy, picked him up at 7 sharp in the black Mercedes S-Class. They drove through the Loop, past the Art Institute and Millennium Park, toward a construction site in the West Loop where Vincent's company was building a luxury hotel. Legitimate business, mostly. The kind that made him look respectable in the Tribune's business section. The site manager, a nervous man named Callahan, met him at the entrance with a hard hat and a clipboard full of problems. Vincent listened with half his attention, nodding at the right moments, making decisions that would save the project 2 weeks and $100,000. It was easy. Everything was easy when you'd been doing it this long. "Mr. Kane, there's one more thing," Callahan said, hesitating. "We've got a squatter situation in the building next door. Old apartment complex we're supposed to demolish next month. Some homeless people moved in. I called the cops, but..." "Handle it," Vincent said. "I don't care how. Just get them out." He was walking back to the car when he saw her. She was standing across the street, in front of a bodega, holding a cardboard sign. Even from a distance, Vincent could read it. "Anything helps. God bless." She was young, early 20s maybe. with long dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail and wearing clothes that had seen better days, a faded denim jacket over a gray hoodie, jeans with holes that weren't fashionable, sneakers held together with duct tape. But it wasn't her clothes that made Vincent stop. It was her face. She was smiling. Not at anyone in particular. Not performing for the passing pedestrians who mostly ignored her. Just smiling, like she'd found something amusing in the gray morning, in the cold wind, in the indifferent city. Like she had a secret the rest of the world didn't know. Vincent watched as a businessman in a suit walked past her without looking. She didn't frown, didn't curse, just kept smiling, adjusting her sign, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear when the wind pulled it loose. "Boss?" Tommy was holding the car door open. Vincent got in, but his eyes stayed on the girl until the Mercedes pulled away, and she disappeared from view. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about her smile. It haunted him through a meeting with his accountants, through dinner at Gibson's steakhouse with a city alderman he had in his pocket, through the drive back to his empty penthouse. He stood at the window again, bourbon in hand again, and tried to remember the last time he'd smiled like that, genuinely, without calculation or performance. He couldn't. The next morning, he told Tommy to take a different route, past the construction site, past the bodega. She was there again. Same spot, same sign. But today she wasn't smiling. She was talking to an older homeless man, sharing something from a paper bag. Bread, maybe. She tore off a piece for herself, gave him the rest. The man said something that made her laugh. Vincent could see it even from the car, the way her whole face lit up, the way she threw her head back. "Stop the car," Vincent said. Tommy pulled over. Vincent sat there for a full minute, watching her through the tinted window. She had nothing, literally nothing, and yet she was sharing what little she had, laughing with a stranger, finding joy in a moment that should have been miserable. Something cracked inside Vincent's chest, something he'd thought was dead. "Drive," he said quietly, but he knew he'd be back. Over the next week, Vincent found excuses to drive past that corner. He told himself he was just checking on the construction site, but he knew the truth. He was checking on her, learning her patterns. She was there most mornings, sometimes with the sign, sometimes just sitting on the curb with a book she'd probably found in a free library box. She talked to other homeless people, shared food, helped an elderly woman carry her shopping bags. She never looked defeated, never looked broken. Vincent started to wonder about her story. Who was she? How did she end up on the streets? Did she have family? Why was she alone? And why did watching her make him feel something again? It was Marco who finally asked the question Vincent had been avoiding. They were in Vincent's office at the back of a restaurant he owned in River North, going over the books, when Marco said, "Boss, you've been distracted lately. Everything okay?" Vincent looked up from the ledger. Marco had been with him for 15 years, since they were both young and hungry and willing to do what it took to survive. If Vincent trusted anyone, it was Marco. "I'm fine," Vincent said. Marco didn't look convinced. "You sure? Because if something's going on..." "I said I'm fine," but he wasn't fine. He was thinking about a girl with a cardboard sign and a smile that shouldn't exist in a world as cruel as the one Vincent knew. That night, he made a decision. A stupid, reckless, completely out-of-character decision. He was going to talk to her. The next morning, Vincent told Tommy to drop him off a block away from the construction site. He walked the rest of the way, hands in the pockets of his cashmere overcoat, feeling absurdly nervous. When was the last time he'd been nervous? He couldn't remember. She was there, sitting on the curb, reading a battered paperback. As he approached, she looked up, and for the first time, he saw her eyes, brown, warm, curious. "Morning," she said, like they were neighbors who'd passed each other 100 times. Vincent stopped a few feet away. Up close, she was prettier than he'd realized. Delicate features, clear skin despite living on the streets, a dusting of freckles across her nose. But it was still the smile that got him. She was smiling at him, this stranger in an expensive coat, like he was worth smiling at. "Morning," he managed. "You need directions or something?" she asked. "You look a little lost." Vincent almost laughed. Lost, if she only knew. "No," he said. I've seen you here before. Wanted to make sure you were okay." Her eyebrows rose. "That's sweet. I'm okay. Cold, but okay." She gestured to the space beside her on the curb. "You want to sit? You look like you could use a break from whatever important thing you're rushing toward." Vincent hesitated. He was wearing a $3,000 suit under his coat. The curb was dirty, but something in her expression, open, genuine, without judgment, made him sit. "I'm Arya," she said, extending a hand. He shook it. Her hand was small and cold. "Vincent. Nice to meet you, Vincent. So what brings a guy like you to this corner? You don't exactly look like you're shopping at the bodega." "I work nearby," he said, which was technically true. "Construction site." "Ah." She nodded toward the skeletal building rising behind them. "The hotel." "Yeah, it's coming along. Gonna be fancy, I bet." "Probably." They sat in silence for a moment. Vincent didn't know what to say. He'd negotiated with cartel bosses, stared down federal prosecutors, ordered men to their deaths without blinking. But sitting on a curb with a homeless girl, he was speechless. "You okay?" Arya asked, tilting her head. "You seem, I don't know, sad maybe?" The word hit him like a punch. Sad. Was that what this was? This emptiness, this numbness, this sense that nothing mattered? "I'm fine," he said automatically. Arya smiled, but it was different this time. Softer. Knowing. "Yeah, people who are fine don't usually sit on curbs with homeless girls at 8 in the morning. But that's okay. You don't have to talk about it." She went back to her book, and Vincent sat there, feeling the cold seep through his coat, watching the city wake up around them. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. After 10 minutes, he stood up. "I should go." "Okay," Arya said, looking up from her book. "Thanks for sitting with me. It was nice." Vincent nodded and started to walk away. Then he stopped, turned back. "Arya." "Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow." Her smile could have lit up the whole city. "I'll be here." As Vincent walked back to where Tommy was waiting, he felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Something that felt almost like hope. He didn't understand it, didn't trust it, but he couldn't deny it. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Vincent Kane wanted to see tomorrow. Vincent kept his word. The next morning, he was back on that curb, and the morning after that, and the one after that. It became a routine he didn't question, didn't analyze, just followed. Every day at 8 a.m. And he would sit with Arya for 20 minutes before heading to whatever meeting or crisis demanded his attention. They talked about small things, the weather, the books she was reading, the characters who passed by on the street. She never asked him what he did for a living, and he never volunteered the information. It was the most honest he'd been with anyone in 20 years. By the second week, Vincent started bringing coffee. 2 cups from the Starbucks on the corner. One black for him, one with cream and sugar for her. Arya's face the first time he handed her the cup was something he'd remember forever. Pure, unfiltered joy over a $4 coffee. "You didn't have to do this," she said, wrapping both hands around the cup like it was precious. "I know, but I'm really glad you did. Thank you, Vincent." The way she said his name, warm, genuine, like it meant something, made his chest tighten. They sat on the curb, drinking their coffee as the city rushed past them. Vincent found himself telling her things he'd never told anyone. Not the truth about his business, but the truth about himself. How empty he felt, how tired, how he'd spent 20 years building something that didn't matter. Arya listened without judgment, without advice, without trying to fix him. She just listened. And when he was done, she said, "You know what I think? I think you forgot how to see the good stuff. It's still there, Vincent. You just stopped looking." "What good stuff?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Look around, Arya. The world is cruel. People are selfish. Everything falls apart eventually." She smiled, that impossible smile. "See, that's where you're wrong. Yeah, bad stuff happens. I'm literally homeless, so trust me, I know. But there's good stuff too. Like this coffee. Like the fact that you keep coming back here even though you don't have to. Like the way that lady over there just helped that old man cross the street. Little things. They add up." Vincent wanted to argue, to explain that her optimism was naive, that the world he knew would crush her eventually. But he couldn't, because sitting there with her, drinking coffee as the sun broke through the Chicago clouds, he almost believed her. "Where are you from?" he asked, changing the subject. "You don't sound like you grew up here." Arya's smile faltered for the first time. "Indiana, small town outside Indianapolis. Left when I was 18. Family? Had a mom. She died 2 years ago. Cancer." Arya stared into her coffee. "I came to Chicago thinking I'd find work, start over. Didn't quite work out that way. Lost my job, couldn't pay rent, ended up here. No other family? Friends? Nope, just me. She looked up at him, and the smile was back, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. But I'm okay. I've got my books, I've got my spot, and now I've got a mysterious friend who brings me coffee. Could be worse. Vincent felt something twist in his gut. Anger, maybe. At a world that could let someone like her fall through the cracks. At himself, for having so much while she had nothing. You shouldn't be living on the street, he said quietly. Arya shrugged. Probably not. But here I am. I'm trying to save up for a room somewhere, but it's slow going. People don't exactly throw money at homeless girls. An idea formed in Vincent's mind. Dangerous. Stupid. But he couldn't let it go. What if I could help you? He said. Get you a place. A job, maybe. Arya's eyes widened. Vincent, no. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. She studied him for a long moment, and Vincent had the uncomfortable feeling that she was seeing right through him. Through the expensive suit, through the carefully constructed walls, down to the lonely, desperate man underneath. Why? She asked softly. Why do you care? Because you make me feel human again, he thought. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it's like to want something other than power. Because you're the first person in 20 years who's looked at me and seen Vincent instead of the monster I've become. But he couldn't say any of that. So instead, he said, because you deserve better than this. Arya's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. Okay, she whispered. Okay, thank you. Vincent made arrangements that afternoon. He owned a building in Wicker Park, mostly apartments he rented out. One unit was vacant, a small studio on the 3rd floor. He had it cleaned, furnished with basics from IKEA, and stocked with groceries. Then he called Arya and gave her the address. It's yours, he said. First month is covered. After that, we'll figure something out. She was crying when she saw it. Actually crying, standing in the middle of the tiny studio with her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe this is real, she said. Vincent, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. But she hugged him anyway, throwing her arms around him like he'd just given her the world. And maybe he had. Vincent stood there, frozen, feeling the warmth of another human being for the first time in years. Slowly, carefully, he put his arms around her and hugged her back. It felt like coming home. Over the next few weeks, Vincent helped Arya get back on her feet. He got her a job at one of his legitimate businesses, a bookstore in Lincoln Park. The owner owed him a favor, and Arya loved books, so it was perfect. She threw herself into the work with the same enthusiasm she brought to everything, and soon the owner was telling Vincent she was the best employee he'd had in years. Vincent visited her at the bookstore sometimes, pretending to browse while really just watching her interact with customers. She was good with people, patient, kind, genuinely interested in helping them find the right book. She made everyone feel seen. It was a gift. And slowly, without quite realizing it, Vincent started to change. He smiled more, laughed occasionally, started noticing the small things Arya had talked about, the way the light hit the lake at sunset, the sound of jazz drifting from a club on Rush Street, the taste of a good meal. He still ran his empire, still made the hard decisions, still did what needed to be done. But now, there was something else, something that felt almost like purpose. Marco noticed. Boss, I don't know what's going on with you, but keep it up. You seem lighter. Vincent didn't tell him about Arya, didn't tell anyone. She was his secret, his escape from the darkness of his real life. When he was with her, he could pretend to be someone else, someone better. But secrets in Vincent's world never stayed secret for long. It was a Tuesday evening when everything started to unravel. Vincent was having dinner with Arya at a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy. Nothing fancy, just red checkered tablecloths and good pasta. They were laughing about something, some story Arya was telling about a customer at the bookstore, when Vincent saw him. Dmitry Volkov, Russian mob, rival organization. Standing across the street, watching them through the window. Vincent's blood went cold. He kept his expression neutral, kept laughing at Arya's story, but his mind was racing. Dmitry had seen them together, which meant Dmitry now knew about Arya, which meant she was in danger. Vincent? Arya's smile faded. You okay? You just went really pale. I'm fine. He lied. Just remembered something I need to take care of. Let me get the check. He drove her home, walked her to her door, made sure she locked it behind her. Then he called Marco. We have a problem. They met at the restaurant in River North. in Vincent's office where they could talk freely. Marco listened as Vincent explained about Dimitri, about Arya, about the danger he'd just put her in by being careless. "Boss," Marco said carefully, "who is this girl? Why does she matter?" Vincent didn't answer right away. He poured himself a drink, downed it, poured another. "She matters," he finally said. "That's all you need to know. I want protection on her, 24/7, and I want to know everything about Dimitri's movements. If he so much as looks at her wrong, I want to know." Marco nodded. "Consider it done. But Vincent, you know this complicates things, right? Having someone you care about. It makes you vulnerable." "I know. And Dimitri knows it too now. He's going to use her to get to you." "I know," Vincent said again, his voice hard. "Which is why we're going to make sure he never gets the chance." But even as he said it, Vincent felt the old familiar weight settling back onto his shoulders. The weight of fear, of responsibility, of knowing that caring about someone meant giving your enemies a weapon to use against you. His father had been right all along. Love was a weakness. But as Vincent sat alone in his office that night, staring at his phone, at the text message Arya had sent, "Thanks for dinner. You're the best friend I've ever had," he realized something terrifying. He didn't care. He'd rather be vulnerable and feel something than be invincible and feel nothing, even if it destroyed him. Dmitri Volkov didn't wait long to make his move. 3 days after the restaurant sighting, Vincent received a message. Not a call, not a text. A package delivered to his penthouse by courier. Inside was a photograph of Arya leaving the bookstore, taken from across the street. On the back, written in Dimitri's distinctive scrawl, "Pretty girl. Be a shame if something happened to her." Vincent stared at the photograph for a full minute, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. Then he called Marco. "Get everyone together. We're having a meeting, tonight." The meeting took place in the basement of the restaurant, in a room that didn't officially exist. Vincent's top people were there. Marco, Tommy, 3 others who'd been with him for years. He laid the photograph on the table. "Dmitri Volkov sent this. He's threatening someone under my protection. I want options." The room went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. Dmitri ran the Russian operation on the north side. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. He was brutal, unpredictable, and had been trying to expand into Vincent's territory for years. So far, Vincent had kept him at bay through a combination of strategic alliances and carefully calculated shows of force. But this was different. This was personal. "We could hit him first," one of the men suggested. "Take out his lieutenants, send a message. That starts a war," Marco said. "We'd win, probably, but it would be bloody, expensive, draw attention we don't need." "Then what do you suggest?" Vincent asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Marco met his eyes. "We negotiate. Give him something he wants in exchange for leaving the girl alone." Vincent's hand slammed down on the table. "No, I don't negotiate with threats. Not about this. Boss, I said no." Vincent stood up, pacing the small room. "Dmitri thinks he can use her to control me. If I give in now, if I show weakness, he'll never stop. He'll keep pushing until he takes everything." "So what do we do?" Tommy asked. Vincent stopped pacing. "We protect her. Round-the-clock security, but discreet. She can't know. And we gather intelligence on Dmitri. I want to know every move he makes, every deal he's planning, every weakness he has. When the time is right, we'll end this, permanently." The men nodded and filed out, leaving Vincent alone with Marco. "You're playing a dangerous game," Marco said quietly. "This girl, she's changing you, making you take risks you wouldn't normally take. I know. Is she worth it?" Vincent thought about Arya's smile, about the way she'd hugged him in that tiny studio apartment, about how she made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could be more than the sum of his sins. "Yes," he said, "she is." Over the next 2 weeks, Vincent walked a tightrope. He continued seeing Arya, but less frequently, and always with security watching from a distance. He told her he was busy with work, which wasn't entirely a lie. He was busy preparing for war, busy investigating Dmitri, busy trying to figure out how to protect the one good thing in his life without destroying it in the process. Arya noticed the change. "You seem stressed," she said one evening when they met for coffee at a cafe in Wicker Park. "Is everything okay?" "Just work stuff," Vincent said, forcing a smile. "Nothing to worry about." But she didn't look convinced. "Vincent, I know we haven't known each other that long, but you can talk to me about anything. You know that, right?" He wanted to tell her everything, about who he really was, what he really did, the danger she was in just by knowing him, but he couldn't, because if she knew the truth, she'd run, and he couldn't lose her. Not yet. I know, he said instead. And I appreciate it, really. They sat in silence for a while, drinking their coffee, watching the neighborhood move around them. Wicker Park was changing, gentrifying, his real estate people would say. Old buildings being renovated, new restaurants opening, young professionals moving in. Progress, they called it. Vincent just saw displacement. Can I ask you something? Arya said suddenly. Sure. What do you do? For work, I mean. You never really talk about it. Vincent's mind raced. He'd prepared for this question, had a cover story ready. I'm in real estate. Property management mostly. Some construction. That's why you were at the construction site that first day. Yeah. Must be doing pretty well. I mean, you own buildings. You helped me out. She trailed off, looking embarrassed. Sorry, that's rude. I shouldn't pry. It's not rude. And yeah, I do okay. He paused, then decided to give her a piece of truth. My father built the business. I just kept it going. Was he a good man? Your father? Vincent thought about that. His father had been many things. Ruthless, ambitious, paranoid. But good? He was complicated. He taught me how to survive in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. But he also taught me that survival isn't the same as living. Sounds like you learned that lesson the hard way. I did. Vincent met her eyes. Until recently. Arya smiled, and there it was again. That warmth, that light. I'm glad I could help. You've done so much for me, Vincent. More than anyone ever has. I just want you to know, you're not alone. Whatever you're dealing with, you don't have to carry it by yourself. Vincent felt something crack inside him. This girl, who had every reason to be bitter and broken, was offering him comfort, offering him friendship, offering him something he didn't deserve. Thank you, he said, his voice rough. That means more than you know. They finished their coffee and walked back to Arya's apartment. Vincent waited until she was safely inside, then nodded to the security team watching from a parked car down the street. They'd keep her safe. They had to. But as Vincent drove home that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was running out of time. Dimitri was planning something. Marco's intelligence network had picked up chatter about a big move, something that would shift the balance of power in Chicago. And Vincent knew, with a cold certainty, that whatever Dimitri was planning involved Arya. The attack came on a Friday night. Arya was closing the bookstore, locking up after a long shift, when 3 men approached her on the street. Vincent's security team saw them coming and moved to intercept, but they weren't fast enough. One of the men grabbed Arya, put a knife to her throat, and started dragging her toward a waiting van. She screamed. The security team opened fire. 2 of Dimitri's men went down immediately. The third, the one holding Arya, hesitated, and that hesitation cost him. Tommy, who'd been watching from across the street, put a bullet through his shoulder. The man dropped, and Arya scrambled away, sobbing, as Tommy and the others secured the scene. Vincent got the call 5 minutes later. He was in the middle of a meeting with his accountants, going over quarterly numbers, when his phone rang. Marco's name on the screen. Talk to me. They tried to take her. We stopped them, but it was close. She's shaken up but not hurt. Vincent was already moving, grabbing his coat, heading for the door. Where is she? Tommy's taking her to the safe house in Oak Park. Boss, we need to talk about next steps. This was a declaration of war. I know. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He made it in 15, driving like the devil himself was chasing him. The safe house was a nondescript bungalow in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place no one would look twice at. Tommy met him at the door. She's in the living room. Vincent, she's asking questions. A lot of questions. Vincent nodded and went inside. Arya was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of tea in her shaking hands. When she saw him, she stood up. Vincent, what the hell is going on? He'd never heard her angry before. It was jarring. Arya, don't Arya me. 3 men just tried to kidnap me. Your men, because they are your men, aren't they? Shot them. There's blood on the sidewalk outside my workplace, so I'm going to ask you one more time. What the hell is going on? Vincent closed the distance between them, gently took the tea from her hands, set it down. Then he took her hands in his. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. What truth? He took a breath. I'm not just in real estate, Arya. I run an organization, a criminal organization. My father built it, and I inherited it. I control a significant portion of Chicago's underworld. And there's a rival, a man named Dmitry Volkov, who's trying to use you to get to me. Arya stared at him. You're a criminal? Yes. Like the Mafia? Something like that. She pulled her hands away, stepped back. Oh my God. You've been lying to me this whole time? I never lied about how I felt about you. About our friendship. That was real, Arya. That is real. But everything else was a lie. Her voice broke. The job, the apartment, was that all just, some kind of game to you? No. God, no. I helped you because I care about you. Because you're the first person in 20 years who's made me feel like I'm more than just this. He gestured at himself, at the expensive suit, at the monster underneath. You make me want to be better. Tears were streaming down Arya's face now. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to think. Then don't say anything. Don't think. Just let me keep you safe. Please. Dmitry won't stop until he gets what he wants. And what he wants is to hurt me by hurting you. But I won't let that happen. I swear to you, Arya. I will keep you safe. She looked at him for a long moment, and Vincent saw the war playing out in her eyes. Fear, betrayal, but also something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. I should leave, she said quietly. I should get as far away from you as possible. You should, Vincent agreed. It would be the smart thing to do. But I'm not going to. His heart stopped. What? I'm not going to leave. Because despite everything, despite the lies and the danger and the fact that you're apparently a crime boss, I still believe in you, Vincent. I still see the man who sat on a curb with me and brought me coffee. The man who gave me a second chance when no one else would. That man is real. I know he is. Vincent felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Tears. Actual tears. Burning at the corners of his eyes. I don't deserve you, he said. Probably not, Arya said, and there was the ghost of a smile. But you've got me anyway. So what do we do now? Vincent pulled her into his arms, held her close, felt her heart beating against his chest. Now, he said, we end this, once and for all. The safe house in Oak Park became Arya's prison for the next week. Vincent insisted she stay there, under constant guard, while he and Marco worked on a plan to deal with Dmitry. She didn't fight him on it. The attack had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. But being cooped up, unable to go to work, or even take a walk without armed escorts, was slowly driving her crazy. Vincent visited every day, usually in the evening after his meetings and obligations were done. They'd sit in the small kitchen, drinking coffee or tea, talking about everything and nothing. He told her more about his life, about growing up in Bridgeport, about watching his father build an empire through violence and cunning, about the day he realized he'd become exactly what his father had been. Do you regret it? Arya asked one night. The life you chose? Vincent was quiet for a long time. I didn't choose it. Not really. It chose me. When my father died, I had two options. Take over, or watch everything he built crumble. And there were people depending on me. People who'd been loyal to my father, who needed the organization to survive. So I stepped up, did what I had to do. That's not an answer. He smiled grimly. No, it's not. The truth? I don't know if I regret it. There are things I've done that I'm not proud of. People I've hurt, lines I've crossed. But if I hadn't done those things, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have met you. That's a hell of a justification. I know, but it's all I've got. Arya reached across the table, took his hand. You know you can still change, right? You don't have to be this person forever. It's not that simple. Why not? Because men like me don't get second chances, Arya. We don't get to walk away and start over. The things I've done, they don't just disappear because I decide I want to be better. Maybe not, but you can stop doing them. You can choose differently going forward. Vincent wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe that redemption was possible, that he could somehow wash the blood off his hands and become the man she seemed to think he could be. But he knew better. He'd seen what happened to people who tried to leave this life. They ended up dead or in prison. There was no happy ending for men like him. Still, sitting there with Arya, feeling the warmth of her hand in his, he let himself imagine it. A different life, a clean life, a life where he could be with her without putting her in danger, where he could wake up every morning without the weight of his sins pressing down on him. It was a beautiful dream, and it was impossible. The breakthrough came 3 days later, Marco's intelligence network finally got something solid on Dmitri. A major weapons deal going down at a warehouse in Bridgeport. 50 crates of military-grade hardware coming in from Eastern Europe, worth millions on the black market. Dmitri was personally overseeing the transaction, which meant he'd be vulnerable. "This is our chance," Marco said. They were in Vincent's office at the restaurant, looking at surveillance photos and shipping manifests. "We hit him during the deal. Take out him and his top people in one move. Without Dmitri, the Russian operation falls apart." Vincent studied the photos. The warehouse was one he knew well. He'd done business there himself years ago. 2 entrances, limited sight lines, easy to lock down. It was perfect for an ambush. "How many men does he have on site?" "Best guess? 20, maybe 25. We'd need to bring at least 30 to be sure." "Do it. I want this clean and fast. No witnesses, no loose ends." Marco hesitated. "Boss, you're not thinking of going yourself, are you?" "Why wouldn't I? Because you've got something to lose now. Before, you didn't care if you lived or died. But now," Marco glanced toward the door, toward the safe house where Arya was waiting. "Now you've got a reason to stay alive. Let me handle this. You stay back, stay safe." Vincent shook his head. "Dmitri made this personal when he went after her. I'm finishing it." "Vincent, that's final, Marco." His second-in-command sighed, but didn't argue further. They spent the rest of the day planning, coordinating, making sure every detail was perfect. The hit would go down in 2 days, on Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, Dmitri Volkov would be dead, and Arya would be safe. That was the plan anyway. Vincent didn't tell Arya about the operation. He didn't want her to worry, didn't want her to try to talk him out of it. Instead, he spent Monday evening with her at the safe house, just sitting on the couch, watching some mindless TV show she liked. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and Vincent memorized the moment. The warmth of her, the sound of her breathing, the way she laughed at the stupid jokes on the screen. If something went wrong tomorrow night, he wanted to remember this, wanted to carry it with him into whatever came next. "Vincent," Arya said during a commercial break. "Yeah? When this is over, when Dimitri's not a threat anymore, what happens to us?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" She sat up, turned to face him. "I mean, do we just go back to how things were? You running your empire, me working at the bookstore, pretending like this is all normal?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "Well, I have, and I don't think I can do it, Vincent. I can't just be your friend who you visit when you have time, who you keep at arm's length because it's safer that way. If we're going to do this, if we're going to be in each other's lives, then I need more than that." Vincent's heart was pounding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I care about you. A lot. More than I probably should, given everything. And I think you care about me too. So maybe, when this is over, we figure out what that means. Together." He should have said no. Should have told her it was impossible, that he was too dangerous, that she deserved better. But looking into her eyes, seeing the hope and fear and vulnerability there, he couldn't do it. "Okay," he said softly. "When this is over, we'll figure it out. Together." Arya smiled, and then she kissed him. It was soft and tentative and perfect, and Vincent felt something in his chest that he'd thought was dead come roaring back to life. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I promise," he said. "I'm going to make this right. I'm going to keep you safe, and then we're going to figure out how to build something good out of all this mess." "I believe you," Arya whispered. Vincent held her close and prayed he could keep that promise. Tuesday night arrived cold and clear. Vincent and his team assembled at a warehouse on the south side, checking weapons, going over the plan one last time. 30 men, all armed, all loyal. They'd hit Dimitri's location at midnight, when the weapons deal was supposed to be in full swing. Marco pulled Vincent aside before they left. "Last chance to stay back, boss." "Not happening. Figured you'd say that." Marco handed him a vest. "At least wear this. For her." Vincent put on the bulletproof vest, then checked his gun. A Glock 19, reliable and familiar. He'd carried it for years, used it more times than he cared to count. Tonight would be no different. Except it was different, because tonight he had something to live for. They drove to Bridgeport in a convoy of black SUVs, moving through the dark streets like shadows. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking structure of brick and steel. Lights were on inside. Dmitri was there, just like the intelligence said. Vincent's team split into 2 groups. One would take the front entrance, the other the back. Vincent went with the front group, Marco with the back. They moved into position, silent and efficient. On my mark, Vincent said into his radio. 3, 2, 1, go. They hit both entrances simultaneously, breaching the doors with controlled explosions that echoed through the night. Vincent went in first, gun up, scanning for targets. The warehouse was full of crates and men, Dimitri's people, scrambling for weapons, shouting in Russian. Gunfire erupted. Vincent's team moved like a machine, taking down targets with brutal efficiency. Vincent himself dropped 3 men in the first 30 seconds, his training and instincts taking over. This was what he was good at. This was what he'd been doing for 20 years. But then he saw Dimitri. The Russian boss was at the far end of the warehouse, behind a wall of crates, firing back at Vincent's men. Their eyes met across the chaos, and Dimitri smiled, a cold, knowing smile that made Vincent's blood run cold. "Kane!" Dimitri shouted over the gunfire. "You think you can kill me? You think this ends anything?" Vincent didn't answer. He just advanced, taking cover behind a steel beam, returning fire. One of Dimitri's men went down, then another. Vincent's team was winning, pushing forward, closing the noose. But Dimitri wasn't done. He pulled out his phone, made a call, said something in Russian that Vincent couldn't hear. Then he looked at Vincent and laughed. "Too late, Kane. It's already done." Vincent's blood turned to ice. "What did you do?" "Your girl, the pretty one. I sent men to the safe house. By now, she's either dead or on her way to me. Either way, you lose." The world stopped. Vincent's vision tunneled. All he could see was Dimitri's smiling face. All he could hear was the echo of those words. "Your girl, dead or on her way to me." "No," Vincent whispered, then louder. "No." He broke cover, charging toward Dimitri with a roar of pure rage. Bullets whipped past him. One grazed his shoulder, another hit his vest, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. He reached Dimitri, slammed him against the crates, put the gun to his head. "Where is she?" Vincent snarled. "Where is she?" Dimitri just laughed, blood on his teeth. "Dead, Kane. She's dead. And it's your fault." Vincent pulled the trigger. The warehouse went silent. Dimitri's body slumped to the ground, and Vincent stood there, chest heaving, covered in blood. Some his, some not. Around him, his men were securing the scene, checking bodies, making sure there were no survivors. But Vincent didn't care about any of that. He grabbed his phone, called the safe house. It rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. He called Tommy. "The safe house. What's the status?" Static. Then Tommy's voice strained. "Boss, we're under attack. Multiple hostiles. We're holding them off, but..." Gunfire in the background. Shouting. Then the line went dead. Vincent ran. Vincent drove like a man possessed, weaving through traffic, running red lights, the speedometer pushing 90 on residential streets. Marco was in the passenger seat, on the phone with their people, trying to get a status update on the safe house. Behind them, 3 SUVs full of Vincent's men followed, racing through the night toward Oak Park. "Tommy's not answering," Marco said, his voice tight. "Neither is anyone else at the house." Vincent's hands tightened on the steering wheel. How many men did Dimitri send? Unknown. But if he planned this as a coordinated attack, Marco didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The safe house came into view 10 minutes later. Vincent's stomach dropped. The front door was blown off its hinges, windows shattered, bullet holes pocking the brick facade. 2 bodies lay on the front lawn. Vincent's men, dead. A black van was parked in the driveway, engine still running. Vincent was out of the car before it fully stopped, gun drawn, moving toward the house. Marco and the others followed, fanning out, covering angles. The front hallway was a war zone. More bodies, blood on the walls, spent shell casings everywhere. Vincent recognized Tommy among the dead and felt something twist in his chest. Tommy had been with him for 12 years. Loyal, dependable, gone. "Aria!" Vincent shouted, moving deeper into the house. "Aria!" No answer. Just silence and the smell of gunpowder and death. They cleared the first floor room by room. Kitchen, empty. Living room, empty. Bathroom, empty. Vincent's heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Please, he thought. Please, let her be alive. Please. The basement door was open. Vincent descended the stairs slowly, every nerve screaming danger. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor, exposed pipes, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. And there, in the corner, he saw her. Arya was huddled behind an old furnace, her hands covering her mouth, eyes wide with terror. She was alive. Alive. Arya, Vincent breathed, holstering his gun and rushing to her. Oh God, you're okay. You're okay. She threw herself into his arms, sobbing. Vincent, they came. So many of them. Tommy and the others. They tried to stop them, but I know. It's over now. You're safe. They were looking for me. They kept shouting my name, saying they were going to take me to Dimitri. But Tommy, he told me to run, told me to hide down here. And then I heard the shooting and I thought, shh, I've got you. Vincent held her tight, feeling her shake against him. Dimitri's dead. He can't hurt you anymore. No one can. Marco appeared at the top of the basement stairs. Boss, we need to move. Cops are going to be here any minute. This much gunfire. Someone definitely called it in. Vincent nodded. He helped Arya to her feet, kept his arm around her as they climbed the stairs. She averted her eyes from the bodies, and Vincent was grateful. She didn't need to see that, didn't need those images in her head. They got into the SUV, Vincent in the back with Arya, Marco driving. As they pulled away from the safe house, Vincent saw the flashing lights of police cars in the distance, converging on the scene. Let them come. Let them investigate. They wouldn't find anything that could be traced back to him. He'd been doing this too long to leave evidence. But as they drove through the dark streets of Oak Park, heading toward another safe location, Vincent realized something. He was tired. Tired of the violence. Tired of the constant threat. Tired of living in a world where the people he cared about could be killed just to get to him. Arya had fallen asleep against his shoulder, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. Vincent looked down at her, at the peaceful expression on her face, and made a decision. This had to end. Not just the war with Dimitri, that was over, but all of it. The Empire, the criminal organization, the life of blood and shadows. He had to find a way out. For her, for himself, for the possibility of something better. Marco, he said quietly. Yeah, boss. When we get somewhere secure, I need you to set up a meeting with all the top people, everyone who matters in the organization. Marco glanced at him in the rearview mirror. What for? I'm going to make some changes. They ended up at a high-rise apartment in the Gold Coast, one of several properties Vincent kept for emergencies. It was luxurious and anonymous, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Vincent got Arya settled in the master bedroom, made sure she had everything she needed, then joined Marco in the living room. Talk to me, Marco said. What kind of changes are we talking about? Vincent poured himself a drink, stared out at the Chicago skyline. I'm stepping back. Not all at once. That would cause chaos. But gradually. I want to transition the organization toward more legitimate operations. Phase out the criminal side. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Boss, you know that's not how this works, right? You can't just decide to go legit. There are people who depend on the illegal side of things. People who won't be happy about losing their income. I know. That's why it has to be done carefully. We'll need to make deals, pay people off, maybe push some operations to other organizations. But it can be done. It has to be done. Because of her. It wasn't a question. Because of her, Vincent confirmed. And because I'm tired, Marco. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of hurting people. Tired of being the monster everyone thinks I am. Marco sighed. You know some people are going to fight you on this. Maybe even try to take you out. Let them try. And if they succeed? If you end up dead because you tried to go soft? Vincent turned to face his oldest friend. Then at least I'll die trying to be something better. That's more than I could say a few months ago. Marco studied him, then slowly nodded. All right, I'll set up the meeting. But Vincent, be ready for a fight, because this is going to get ugly before it gets better. I know. The meeting took place 2 days later, in the private room of the restaurant. 15 men, all key players in Vincent's organization. They ran everything from construction contracts to gambling operations, from loan sharking to protection rackets. They'd been with Vincent for years, some of them since his father's time, and they were not going to like what he had to say. Vincent stood at the head of the table, Arya's words echoing in his mind. You can choose differently going forward. He took a breath and began. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I know it's short notice, but we need to discuss the future of this organization. Specifically, my vision for where we're headed. He laid out his plan. a 5-year transition away from criminal activities toward legitimate business. They'd sell off the illegal operations to other organizations, invest the profits in real estate and construction and other legal ventures. Anyone who wanted to stay on would have a place in the new structure. Anyone who didn't could leave with a generous severance. The room erupted. "You're out of your mind," one man said. "We can't just walk away from millions in revenue. This is because of that girl, isn't it?" Another accused. "You're going soft. Your father would be ashamed." A third spat. Vincent let them vent. Let them get it out of their systems. Then he raised his hand, and the room fell silent. "I understand your concerns," he said calmly. "And you're right. This is a major shift. But consider the alternative. We keep doing what we're doing, and eventually someone takes us down. The feds, a rival organization, doesn't matter. This life has an expiration date. I'm offering us a way out before that date comes due." "And if we don't want out?" one of the older men asked. "What then?" Vincent met his eyes. "Then you're free to leave. I won't stop you. But you won't be part of this organization anymore. I'm done with the old way. It's time for something new." The debate raged for hours. Some men were on board, seeing the wisdom in Vincent's plan. Others were vehemently opposed, unwilling to give up the power and money that came with the criminal empire. By the end of the meeting, the organization was split almost down the middle. Marco pulled Vincent aside afterward. "We've got a problem. Half these guys are going to fight you on this, and some of them have the resources to make it a real problem." "I know. We'll deal with it." "How?" Vincent thought about Arya, sleeping peacefully in the apartment, trusting him to keep her safe, trusting him to be better. "However we have to," he said. "But I'm not backing down. This is happening, Marco. With or without them." Over the next few weeks, Vincent worked tirelessly to make his vision a reality. He negotiated deals with rival organizations, selling off operations and territories. He invested in legitimate businesses, creating jobs and opportunities for his people to transition into legal work. He met with lawyers and accountants, setting up structures that would protect him from prosecution, while allowing him to slowly distance himself from the criminal world. It was exhausting and dangerous. 3 times, there were attempts on his life. Once a car bomb that failed to detonate, once a sniper who missed, once a poisoning attempt that Marco caught before Vincent drank the tainted whiskey. Each time, Vincent tracked down the responsible party and dealt with them. Not with violence, but with exile. He gave them money and a one-way ticket out of Chicago, with the understanding that if they ever came back, they'd be killed. Slowly, painfully, the organization began to change. Some men left, taking their operations elsewhere. Others stayed, adapting to the new reality. And through it all, Vincent kept Arya close, protecting her, drawing strength from her presence. She was his anchor, his reason, his hope. One night, as they sat together in the Gold Coast apartment, Arya asked him, "Do you think it's working? Your plan?" Vincent considered the question. "I think so. It's slow and it's messy, but we're making progress. In a year, maybe 2, we'll be mostly legitimate. And then what?" He took her hand. "And then maybe we can have a normal life, or as normal as it gets for someone like me." Arya smiled. "I'd like that." "Me too." But even as he said it, Vincent knew the hardest part was still ahead, because there was one man who would never accept the changes. One man who had the power and the will to tear everything down, and that man was coming for him. The threat came from an unexpected source. Not from within Vincent's organization, but from outside it. The FBI had been watching the upheaval, watching Vincent's attempts to go legitimate, and they saw an opportunity. If they could flip someone close to Vincent, get them to testify about the old operations, they could bring down the entire organization, past and present. And they found their witness in a man named Carmine Russo. Carmine had been one of Vincent's father's original crew, a soldier who'd been with the organization for 30 years. He was old now, sick with cancer, and facing a long prison sentence for a murder he'd committed decades ago. The FBI offered him a deal: testify against Vincent, and they'd let him die at home instead of in a cell. Carmine took the deal. Vincent found out through Marco, who'd been tipped off by a contact in the U.S. Attorney's office. They were sitting in Vincent's office when Marco delivered the news, and for a long moment, Vincent just stared at him. "Carmine," he finally said. "Of all people, he's dying, boss. They're using that against him. promising him he can spend his last days with his family if he gives you up. Vincent felt a familiar coldness settle over him. The old Vincent, the one who'd ruled through fear and violence, wanted to have Carmine killed, wanted to send a message that betrayal had consequences. But the new Vincent, the one who was trying to be better, knew that would only make things worse. What can he give them? Vincent asked. Enough. He was there for a lot of the old operations, knows where the bodies are buried, literally. If he testifies, they'll have enough to indict you on multiple counts. RICO, murder, conspiracy. You'd be looking at life in prison. Vincent leaned back in his chair, thinking. Can we make a counteroffer? Pay his family? Make sure they're taken care of, in exchange for his silence? Already tried. The feds have him locked down tight. No contact with anyone from the organization. Then we need to disappear the evidence. Anything Carmine can point them to. We need to make sure it's gone. Marco shook his head. Boss, we're talking about 30 years of operations. There's no way we can clean all of that up in time. The grand jury convenes in 2 weeks. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I need to talk to Arya. He found her in the apartment, reading a book on the couch. She looked up when he came in, and her smile faded when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Vincent sat down beside her, took her hands. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting, okay? Okay. He told her everything. About Carmine, about the FBI, about the very real possibility that he was going to be arrested and spend the rest of his life in prison. Arya's face went pale, but she didn't interrupt, just held his hands tighter. When he was done, she said, What are you going to do? I have a choice to make. I can run, leave Chicago, leave the country, start over somewhere else. I have the resources to disappear completely. Or I can stay and fight, try to beat the charges, or at least minimize the damage. What do you want to do? Vincent looked into her eyes. I want to stay. I want to finish what I started, turning this organization into something legitimate. I want to build a life here, with you. But if I stay, there's a good chance I'll end up in prison, and I can't ask you to wait for me. I can't ask you to put your life on hold for someone who might never get out. Arya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Do you remember what I told you? That first day when you sat with me on the curb? You told me a lot of things. I told you that there's good stuff in the world, little things that add up. And you, Vincent Kane, are one of those things. You're not perfect. You've done bad things, but you're trying to be better. And that matters. Arya, I'm not done. If you run, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. You'll never really be free. But if you stay, if you face this, then maybe, you can actually find redemption. Real redemption, not just the idea of it. And if I go to prison? She smiled, and there were tears in her eyes. Then I'll wait, however long it takes, because you're worth waiting for. Vincent felt something break inside him. All the walls he'd built, all the armor he'd worn for 20 years, cracked and fell away. He pulled Arya into his arms and held her like she was the only real thing in the world. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not, she said. But you've got me anyway. Vincent made his decision. He would stay. He would face the charges. And he would do everything in his power to minimize the damage, not just to himself, but to the people who'd been loyal to him. He hired the best lawyers money could buy. He cooperated with the FBI, giving them information on rival organizations in exchange for leniency. He made deals, cut agreements, did everything he could to protect his people while still accepting responsibility for his own actions. The grand jury handed down indictments 3 weeks later. Vincent Kane was charged with racketeering, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. The trial would begin in 6 months. Those 6 months were the strangest of Vincent's life. He was out on bail, living in the Gold Coast apartment with Arya, continuing to run what was left of his organization. But everything felt different now, lighter, somehow. Like he'd been carrying a weight for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight, and now that weight was finally lifting. He spent his days in meetings with lawyers, going over strategy, preparing for trial. He spent his evenings with Arya, cooking dinner together, watching movies, talking about the future, a future that might not include him, but that he wanted to help build anyway. If I go to prison, he said one night, I want you to have the apartment and the bookstore. I'll sign it over to you. You'll be set up financially. You won't have to worry. Arya shook her head. I don't want your money, Vincent. I just want you. I know, but I need to know you'll be okay. Please, let me do this. She finally agreed, and Vincent felt a small measure of peace. Whatever happened, Arya would be taken care of. That was what mattered. The trial began on a cold Monday in February. The courthouse was packed. Reporters, spectators, people who'd been affected by Vincent's organization over the years. Vincent sat at the defense table in a dark suit, looking calm and composed, while inside he was terrified. The prosecution's case was strong. Carmine testified, laying out decades of criminal activity in painful detail. Other witnesses followed. Former associates, victims, FBI agents. The evidence was overwhelming, but Vincent's lawyers were good. They poked holes in the testimony, challenged the evidence, argued that Vincent had been trying to reform, to make amends. They called character witnesses, people Vincent had helped over the years, businesses he'd supported, charities he'd donated to. They painted a picture of a man who'd made mistakes but was trying to do better. And then, on the final day of testimony, Vincent took the stand. His lawyer had advised against it. Too risky, he'd said. The prosecution will tear you apart. But Vincent insisted. He needed to say his piece, needed to tell his story. He sat in the witness box, looked out at the courtroom, and told the truth. About his father, about the life he'd inherited, about the choices he'd made, and the people he'd hurt, about meeting Arya, and realizing there was more to life than power and fear, about trying to change, to be better, even though he knew it might be too late. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said, his voice steady. "I know I don't deserve it, but I am asking for a chance to keep making amends, a chance to finish what I started. I've spent 20 years building an empire on violence and fear. Let me spend the next 20 tearing it down and building something better in its place." The courtroom was silent when he finished. Even the prosecutor looked moved. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they came back, Vincent stood to hear the verdict. Arya sitting in the front row behind him, Marco beside her. "On the count of racketeering, we find the defendant guilty." Vincent's heart sank. "On the count of conspiracy, we find the defendant guilty." Arya's hand covered her mouth. "On the count of accessory to murder, we find the defendant not guilty." A small mercy. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. Vincent was remanded to custody immediately, led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. As he passed Arya, he stopped. "I love you," he said. The first time he'd said it out loud. "I love you too," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'll be here. I promise." Sentencing day arrived. Vincent stood before the judge, his lawyers beside him, and listened as his fate was decided. "Mr. Kane, you have been found guilty of serious crimes that have caused real harm to real people. However, the court also recognizes your efforts at reform, your cooperation with law enforcement, and the testimony of those who believe you are capable of change. Therefore, I am sentencing you to 10 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 5 years. Additionally, you will be required to pay restitution to the victims of your crimes and to continue cooperating with ongoing investigations. 10 years. It could have been life." Vincent felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. As he was led away, he looked back one last time. Arya was there, standing in the courtroom, her hand over her heart. She mouthed 3 words, "I'll be here," and Vincent believed her. 5 years later, the visiting room at the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, was painted a depressing shade of beige. Vincent sat at a table, wearing prison blues, his hair now more silver than dark. He'd aged in the last 5 years, but there was something different about him too, something lighter in his eyes. The door opened, and Arya walked in. She was older too, but still beautiful, still smiling that impossible smile. She sat down across from him, reached across the table to take his hands. "Hey you," she said. "Hey yourself. How was the drive?" "Long, but worth it. Always worth it." They talked for an hour, about everything and nothing. About the bookstore, which Arya had expanded into a small chain. About Marco, who was running what was left of the organization, now almost entirely legitimate. About the parole hearing coming up in 3 months. "I think you're going to get it," Arya said. "You've been a model prisoner. You've taken every class, every program. You've helped other inmates. The warden wrote you a letter of recommendation." "Maybe," Vincent said. "But even if I don't, I'm okay. I've had a lot of time to think in here, about my life, about my choices, and I've realized something. I spent 20 years trying to build an empire, and all it did was make me empty. But these last 5 years, locked in a cell, I've felt more free than I ever did out there. Because you're finally at peace with yourself. Yeah, because of that, and because of you. You kept your promise, Arya. You've been here every month for 5 years. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I love you, Vincent. That doesn't change just because you're in here. Vincent felt tears prick at his eyes. When I get out, if I get out, I want to marry you. I want to build a real life with you. A boring, normal, wonderful life. Arya laughed. Boring? You? I'll believe it when I see it. I'm serious. I know you are. And yes, whenever you get out, whenever you're ready, my answer is yes. They sat there, hands clasped across the table, two people who'd found each other in the darkest of places and somehow built something beautiful. 3 months later, Vincent appeared before the parole board. He told them the same thing he'd told the jury. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, just a chance to keep making amends, a chance to live a different life. The board deliberated for an hour. When they came back, the chairwoman looked Vincent in the eye and said, Mr. Kane, your parole is granted. You'll be released in 30 days. Vincent walked out of prison on a sunny morning in May. Arya was waiting for him at the gate, wearing a yellow dress, smiling like the sun itself. He dropped his bag and ran to her, picked her up, spun her around. I'm out, he said, laughing. I'm actually out. I told you, she said. I told you you'd make it. They drove back to Chicago together, windows down, music playing, the whole world ahead of them. Vincent looked over at Arya, at the woman who'd saved him without even trying, and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Joy. The city came into view, the skyline rising against the blue sky. Vincent had been born here, had built an empire here, had lost everything here. But now, driving into Chicago with Arya beside him, it felt like coming home. Not to the life he'd left behind, but to the life he was finally ready to build. A life of second chances, of redemption, of hope. A life worth living. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Hit that like button if Vincent and Arya's journey touched your heart, and drop a comment below telling me what you thought. What would you have done in Vincent's place? Do you believe people can truly change? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care. And remember, it's never too late to choose a different path.